my name is Carla Garrett, and I serve as Workforce Lead in EDA's Office of Innovation and Entrepreneurship, and you'll hear from me and several of my colleagues today. For awareness, again, this webinar is being recorded. The recording as well as the slides will be shared today. Will be available on our website shortly after we conclude today's session and will remain posted throughout the competition period. As a reminder, everything that we share today is meant to support your understanding, but the AI addendum and the PUIA Notice of Funding Opportunity remains the authoritative source. So please make sure to refer back to those documents as you continue to develop your proposals. We do have a robust presentation prepared for you today. As we likely won't be able to take any live questions, we do have staff monitoring the chat. So please input your questions along with your contact information so that we can follow up with you. If you've previously submitted a question to the OIE mailbox regarding the AI Upskill program, we do have them. We are going through this week and responding to those inquiries accordingly. So today, our goal is to help you better understand the project budget narrative and highlight some key regulations that could impact how you structure your concept. This is not intended to walk you through every possible scenario or feature of the budget narrative, but make sure you have enough information to strategically align your activities to the funding you request and ensuring the delivery of those activities are closely aligned with EDA regulations. For example, you maybe think of providing a form of work-based learning to program participants and anticipate paying wages with federal funds. As stated throughout the AI addendum funding opportunity, and as you'll hear today, federal funds cannot be used to pay program participant wages. As such, that could alter your strategy. So we want to make sure that you're armed with the most relevant information as you and your partner structure your funding, your request. And second, we want to provide you a quick snapshot of the submission platform that will be used to submit applications. So for our agenda, we'll start with program overview and objectives. We'll take a deeper look at the budget narrative components and categories that make up the budget narrative. We'll walk through some requirements around match, which is also termed cost share, cost allowability, some prohibitives around the AI Upskill program, procurement, and then finally submitting the application. So this slide has been in every webinar that we have, and we'll continue to elevate those. So this program is in alignment with America's AI Action Plan. And first, we're aiming to prioritize AI skill development as a core focus of workforce funding streams, pilot innovative models, including rapid retraining and strategies for shifting skill requirements. And third, surface scalable, performance-driven solutions that can help the workforce system adapt as AI continues to reshape tasks and roles. This program is authorized under the Public Works Economic Adjustment Assistance Program, PUIA, which enables EDA to fund innovative workforce training through sectoral partnerships. That legal authority is what allows us to support the design, expansion, and implementation of the AI Upskill Accelerator pilot program. The AI Upskill Accelerator program supports employer-led workforce systems that equip workers with practical job-ready AI skills, not theoretical concepts, but skills aligned to the actual tools and workflows employers are using. Sectoral partnerships will be the foundation of this program. You'll hear that throughout all of the webinars we've presented to date. And if you submit questions to us, you'll continue to hear us state how important sectoral partnerships are and intended to be the engine of the projects that you propose. So our program goals include preparing workers with job-ready AI skills, strengthening employer-aligned training models, and identifying scalable approaches that other regions can learn from. Right, so your proposal centers around sectoral partnerships between an eligible lead entity and employers who help design and deliver AI training. At a high level, your proposal must describe your sectoral partnership, which is who is involved and why. Describe the need for AI training in your chosen industry and region. As we've talked about in previous webinars, this is your special need, which is a requirement of all applications. It will describe your proposed activities, your funding request, and why your approach will work. And then lastly, describe the benefits to workers and employers. So today, is to help center and provide you more information around this third item, describing your project activities and tying that to the funding request. So for these other ones, we strongly encourage you to go back to our website, look at the webinars that we've provided as they speak more in depth to those buckets. And today we will be centering around the funding request. On June 23rd at 12 p.m. noon, there's also a link posted on our website. We will have a webinar around data evaluation and impact, which will then speak to this fourth bucket. So we're wanting, again, to arm you with as much information as possible to help you develop your concept. So as you are working with your partners, developing your project, we ask that you anchor around this slide here, the information presented here, as what's being asked that you submit your application around and speak to also aligns to the merit criteria and how applications will be scored. So now I will pass it to my colleague Shalini Bansal to present to you more information around forming your budget.
Thank you, Carla. Next slide, please. So to guide you in developing the budget for the project, there are 3 required documents. The first is the budget narrative. The budget narrative's purpose is to elaborate on the proposed award costs, which will be summarized in the second document, the SF44A. The budget narrative provides an additional level of detail which EDA needs to evaluate the budget request and verify compliance with applicable match requirements. The budget narrative should be developed before working on the form SF44A. So the second form is the budget form SF44A. It features the cost categories, and it shows the maximum federal award amount as well as the required match. Although the SF44A form is a standalone form, EDA requires that it be submitted through the EDGE portal. The third required document is the staffing plan. The purpose of the staffing plan is to provide detailed and specific information regarding the personnel costs associated with the project. The staffing plan breaks down the recipient's personnel costs by listing each employee's role on the project, salary, and percentage of time dedicated to the project. Staff assigned to the project that are not employees of the recipient but also contribute to the project implementation may be listed in other sections of the budget narrative, such as the contractual and subawards area. Next slide, please. This is a snapshot of what the optional budget narrative template looks like. EDA has provided an optional budget narrative template. It's in Excel format, and we will be sending these slides out to you. The link is in the slides as well. We strongly encourage applicants to use the budget narrative template to develop their budget. Next slide, please. So once the budget narrative has been developed, applicants will need to use the EDGE portal to enter the data into the SF44A cost categories. The EDGE portal will walk you through this important step in recording the project's budget.
All right, so as I mentioned before, we've had a webinar on developing your concept where we talked about identifying who your sectoral partnership partners are, the activities that will be taking place and led by your sectoral partnership. And we also mentioned in that presentation, ensuring that those activities are reflected in your budget. So as you continue to think about and develop what these activities are, you'll also be wanting to think about how will we execute these activities? Who will do that? And so there are several ways that you can be thinking about that. Are you the lead recipient, leading your sectoral partnership, taking on some of that work? Are you looking at a sub-recipient to do some of that work? Or are you looking at some of this work being contracted out? And so as we talk throughout the rest of this presentation and present on the budget components, it's important to remember that the budget components that will apply to you as a lead recipient also apply to your sub-recipient, and could also be part of your contractor's budgets. So we just wanted to elevate and just tie together. As you're developing your concept and activities, you're also thinking about who's doing this work, and your budget narrative would want to reflect that. So Shalini, I'll pass it back to you to dive a bit deeper into the budget cost categories.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So one of the requirements for applicants is that they should discuss each element of their project budget. The project budget is divided into multiple categories in the SF424A form, which are personnel, fringe, travel, equipment, supplies, contractual, and indirect. And anything that doesn't fit into the other categories goes into the other category. Note that construction costs are not allowable in this NOFO. Costs for any activities that disturb the ground or modify a structure are not allowable unless they are related to equipment installation, and they are minimal, and they should receive prior EDA approval. Note that anything that goes into the other category is truly other, which doesn't fit into any of the other categories. Thank you for advancing the slide. Before you prepare to launch a project and you build your staffing plan budget, think about the obligations for recipients and subrecipients. You must think about how your organization is staffed and whether it's sufficient to monitor and enforce internal controls on award spending. Any existing organizational policies must be reviewed so that you can ensure they're strong enough to mitigate non-compliance. For example, safeguards against bad decisions or failure to follow established policies and procedures. Our personnel staffing the project trained on the recipient's policies and procedures. And this is important because they're executing the project. They must follow their own policies. And how are the duties segregated? Are they adequately separated? And how are you safeguarding award funded assets, such as the equipment that you purchase with the proposed project? And then if you need technical assistance from EDA or professional services, which could be an allowable cost, think about that. Next slide, please. So the fringe benefits category, oops, we're back in the personnel category, sorry. So you must submit a plan which lists all the proposed positions charged to the federal and match portion of the budget for each year of the proposed grant performance period. So personnel includes compensation for personal services. It includes all remuneration paid currently or accrued for services of the employees rendered during the period of performance under the federal award. It includes wages and salaries. These costs are allowable as long as they adhere to the 2 CFR 200.430 compensation. And as with all costs for the project, they adhere to the cost principles at 2 CFR Part 200, Subpart E. These list all staffing positions proposed to support the activities in the grant application. Insert the title only Annual cost of living adjustments for employees are allowable. Provide a percentage of each position's time devoted to the project or full-time equivalent as it pertains to the grant application, and the total amount charged to the project, and divide it between the federal share and the non-federal share for the period of performance of the grant. Also include a brief narrative of the assigned roles as it relates to the proposed project. And you'll see if you work using the budget narrative template, it walks you through these steps. Next slide, please. Fringe benefits includes allowances and services that employers provide to their employees as compensation in addition to regular salaries and wages. This is governed by 2 CFR 200.431. Please provide the basis for fringe calculations and document included benefits according to each organization's recipient or subrecipient's established written policy. Provide a breakdown of the amounts and percentage that comprise fringe benefit costs, such as health insurance, FICA, retirement, etc. Next slide, please. So the travel category is the self-explanatory. It's for travel costs, which include transportation, lodging, subsistence, and related items incurred by employees who are in travel status on official business of the recipient or the subrecipient to support project-related activities. These include costs for any travel to and from professional meetings, from site visits, related fieldwork, seminars, or training that directly benefits the proposed project on behalf of the organization's employees. It is expected that you will provide the purpose of the travel. You will include the estimated number of people per trip, how they are going to travel, and the average cost per trip, which includes all the transportation, lodging, meals, and incidentals, etc. Estimate the number of events for which travel is required, and also explain which project component the travel is needed for, and the annual funding allocation. Each organization must have and follow its own travel reimbursement policy. Examples of activities that require travel include attending conferences, employer engagement events, or project convenings. Please note that travel budgets are carefully scrutinized and must be judiciously allocated. Subrecipient travel costs must be captured under the subrecipient budgets, which is categorized under contractual costs. Next slide, please. This slide talks about equipment requirements. When you purchase equipment, sometimes there's confusion as to whether this is a piece of equipment or is it a supply. So to provide more clarity on this, equipment must be tangible. It's non-expendable personal property, which has a useful life of more than 1 year and generally an acquisition cost of $10,000 or more per unit. Please identify each item of equipment that you expect to purchase. List the quantity, purpose, and unit cost per item. Also include the program component that the equipment will support. All property purchases must adhere to EDA property regulations at 13 CFR Part 314 and government-wide grant property regulations at 2 CFR 200.310 through 316. Please note, items with a unit cost of less than $10,000 are supplies. They are not equipment. And the costs for any activity that disturbs the ground or modifies the structure are not allowable under this NOFO unless the costs are related to equipment installation and they are minimal and they receive prior EDA approval. Also, contractor equipment costs are unallowable. An example of equipment purchased with the program could be purchasing a plotter at a cost of $10,000 per unit to support mapping activities during program implementation. Next slide, please. So supplies consists of tangible personal property other than equipment, which has a unit cost of less than $10,000. Um, you must identify the categories of supplies, meaning whether it's office supplies or laptops, and list the quantity and unit cost per item. Itemize all supplies. Miscellaneous supplies is not sufficient. Thank you. So for contractual costs, there are two types of contracts, contractual costs, and they both go in this contractual cost category. It consists of contracts and subawards. Costs for services carried out by an individual or organization that are other than the applicant, um, and they have been procured via a contract or by making a subaward with prior approval on entities that are eligible. Um, that's all included in the contractual cost category. So when you're describing the elements of the contractual cost, please state whether the cost will be for a subaward or a contractor, and then identify each proposed contracted activity and specify its purpose and estimated cost. So contractors must be procured in a manner that provides for full and open competition, and it's consistent with the procurement rules in 2 CFR 200.317 through 327. As such, names of contractors are not generally included in the budget narrative. Next slide, please. If it's a sub-award, please list the subrecipient's name, activity, the purpose of the sub-award, and cost for service. You may want to refer to 2 CFR 200.331, subrecipient and contract determinations, to help distinguish between procurement contracts and subaward agreements. My colleague will discuss more in detail about the subawards versus the contracts in the coming moments. Next slide, please. Other cost category. So this truly is for any direct costs that do not fit into any of the specific budget categories. This could be for utilities, custodial services, employee training tuition, participant support services. It's list any item that was not covered previously, provide a description of the item, the quantity, the purpose and program component costs that the activity is applicable to, and item costs. Use it only if the cost does not fit into another category, and provide a detailed justification. Next slide, please. Again, the construction costs are not allowable under this NOFO. Pre-approved equipment installation activities are allowed, but it must be pre-approved by EDA and must be minimal in nature. Next slide, please. So on indirect costs, what is an indirect cost? It's also known as the facilities and administrative costs. It's defined as a cost incurred for a common or joint purpose that benefits multiple cost objectives and cannot be easily assigned to a single project without disproportionate effort. These costs are necessary for an organization's overall operations. So the key characteristics of indirect costs includes that they are common costs. They're incurred for general usage across the entire organization, and it benefits multiple objectives. And they're not readily assignable, meaning that you can't directly assign it to a specific program or project. So when computing indirect costs, please use the approved indirect cost rate agreement. Usually organizations have a NICRA, and this is available through your cognizant federal agency. You may use a 15% de minimis rate based on the modified total direct cost if eligible. And if you don't have a NICRA, you must document the rate and the cost basis, and do not include unallowable costs in the indirect cost base. please refer to 2 CFR 200 modified total direct costs. I saw a comment about defining NICRA. That's the indirect cost rate agreement with your cognizant agency. Next slide, please. This slide just summarizes all the variety of cost categories that are available to you to bucket your expenses under. And it provides a snapshot of what kind of activity goes under which category. And we've gone through it. This is just provided for you to reference as you build your budget out. And with that, I'm going to pass this over to my colleague, Nancy Isle, who's going to discuss the match requirements. Thank you.
Thank you, Shalini. Hi, everybody. I'm Nancy Isle, and I'm the program attorney here at Glad to be here and glad that you're here. I'm going to talk about a couple of the legal things that you might want to be thinking about at the application stage. Match requirements. That's one of the requirements. Next slide, thank you. The question is, what is match? Well, Shalini just mentioned modified total direct costs. You might be wondering what that is. If you're interested in any of the definitions, you can find them at 2 CFR 200.1, which is the definition section. That's Title II of the Code of Federal Regulations 200.1, and they apply the Title II, Part 200 are the government-wide uniform grant regulations. So the definitions are under 200.1. By the way, best source is electronic. Yeah, both.
Hey, Nancy, you're kind of cutting out just a little bit.
I think I'll take.
Uh-oh.
Oh, is that not better?
Oh, that sounds better, Nancy.
Okay, perfect. I'm sorry to do this, but I think I'll turn my camera off even though I'm in the office. just to make it clear. Should I repeat what I just said?
Maybe just a little bit, Nancy. Yeah, because match is really important.
Yes. Thank you, Justin. Thanks for letting me know. Okay, so let me know if that happens again. I'm sorry, my camera will be off. But anyway, what is match? As I was saying, any definitions that you want to find, go to 200, 2 CFR 200.1, the definition.
Oh, Nancy, you lost you again.
I'm going to switch portals. Okay. I'm going to switch portals. Is that better?
You are coming through.
Keep going, Nancy. Keep talking.
Okay. I switched portals. Let me know. Don't ask me why. What's going on here? In any case, the best place to find any of the regulations is the Electronic Code of Federal Regulations at www.ecfr.gov. Justin put a link in the chat, but definition section 2 CFR 200.1 that defines match. What is match? It is the portion of the project costs not paid for by federal funds. It's the financial contribution that you or another organization pledges to the project when it becomes part of the project. It can be cash, loans, bonds, or what's called in kind. Match has to be an eligible project cost, and it has to meet applicable federal cost principles, just like all the other costs have to. And that is at 2 CFR 200, part 200, subpart E. Okay. Also, just so you know, the letter has to say what kind of match you're contributing to the project. Next slide, please, Carlos. So what is in-kind match? In-kind match is contributions directly related to the proposed project. It's a contribution, not a financial contribution, but it's personnel, equipment, or space. And match commitment letters that pledge this type of match, which isn't cash, they have to provide a valuation and a description for each element of the contribution. Match letters that simply state that an in-kind match amount is X or Y without a description and an itemized valuation will be deemed insufficient. See 2 CFR 200.306 on cost sharing for how to value in-kind match. 2 CFR 200.306 goes into detail about how to value match depending on factors such as who is doing the donating, what kind of in-kind match it is, and even times what it will be used for. So there are different ways of values depending on whether the recipient or the subrecipient is donating services or property, whether it's a third-party volunteer, whether it's a third-party employee doing his or her regular work or something else. Donated property, depends on use. One of the key themes is fair market value, but you'll definitely want to go to that regulation to figure out how to value your match in a way that makes sense, and include that in your letter. Next slide, please, Carla. So this AI addendum requires a 40% match. The maximum investment rate for EDA is 60%. EDA cannot contribute more than 60% of the total project amount, including match. So the total project cost is all the direct costs and indirect costs added together, including match. EDA can contribute maximum of 60% of that. The thing is, you have to meet, as the addendum explains on page 46, you have to meet special need. And special need in this AI addendum involves 4 factors. So look at page 46 of the addendum to make sure that you meet that special need, because meeting that special need and meeting this, your 40% match rate is going to take, it's going to basically, it's what applies in this addendum, not the information that is listed in the fiscal year 23, 24, 25 NOFO. So this is what you need for this project. You need to have at least a 40% match rate, including all your cash, loans, bonds, or in kind, and you need to meet special need. Okay, next slide, Carla, please. And how do you demonstrate match? Go to pages 9 and 10 on the NOFO to see how to demonstrate the match, the source and the amount. But you have to make sure that each match letter is clear that the match will be unencumbered, committed, and available at the time of award. It can't be contingent on something else. It can't be conditional. The thing about it is it becomes part of the project. So once it's donated to the project, whoever's donated it can't get it back. It becomes a permanent part of the project. So if it is rent or land or whatever it might be, it's not temporary. It's permanently part of the project. So it has to be available because it is a statutory requirement. Any organization that is committing match to your project has to submit its own match letter. And that means that you, for example, as a potential applicant, cannot say we have match from X organization, we have a certain amount of match from Y organization, and then you sign it. That won't be sufficient. You have to make sure that each organization that is submitting or pledging match, they all submit their own separate match letters, and those letters are signed by an authorized representative of the organization actually donating the match. So make sure you get that, not in the applicant organization. And you can see FAQ number 12 on that. Next slide, please, Carla. And next slide, too. We're going to talk a little bit about costs here. In general, I'm going to talk a little bit about the AI addendum specific cost prohibitions, but I also want to start out by just mentioning some of the cost requirements. And I know Shawnee mentioned this earlier, but all costs have to be reasonable, necessary, allowable, allocable to the project, and consistently treated, among other things, but those are the main things. You can read about those in subpart E on 2 CFR Part 200, especially look at 2 CFR 200.403 and the factors that apply to all costs. So I know there was a question in the chat about what would be considered a reasonable amount for participant support costs. Well, that really depends. And you want to look at, there's a regulation that, to read about the cost affecting reasonability and how to determine if the cost is reasonable. You can write it down. CFR 200.404. What is reasonable? What does it mean to be allocable? 2 CFR 200.405. So any of you filling out forms or drafting your application, getting everything together, definitely take a look at these to make sure that your costs will adhere to the cost principles when you're submitting your application. In any case, besides, complying with the general cost principles, there are a couple of things, and they're listed in the addendum. They're also listed in FAQ 30, but there are some things that the funding under this NOVO cannot be used for. And I just want to cover a couple of them, 3 or 4. One of them is for-profit entities. Because of the nature or the governing statute that authorizes this program, EDA cannot give direct funding to an ineligible entity that will be a for-profit entity. For-profit entities are not eligible for funding under this NOFO. Because of that, funding can't be passed to them indirectly in a way that couldn't be given them to them directly. Obviously, contracts are okay, but contracts are competitively procured, and we'll talk about that in a second. But it can't be given non-competitively like a subaward. So project funds cannot be used to reimburse for-profit entities for training that's exclusively for its own employees. Training, if done, needs to be available to multiple entities, not just an entity's own employees. It can't be used to subsidize an employer's wage expenses or non-eligible entities' operating costs, meaning a for-profit entity's operating costs. Funding can't be passed or transferred to companies being served by the applicant organization, and funding can't be used to subsidize the company's expenses that are unrelated to program activities like general operating expenses. Funding can also not be used to purchase contractor equipment. So look at FAQ 8 and FAQ 30 for more on that. As I mentioned, the for-profits, I think the addendum is clear, for-profits can benefit from this program. They could be contractors under the project. They can compete on competitive procurements, and they can benefit in that way. They can also be employers. For-profits, there's a large role for for-profits. They just can't get direct funding. So next slide, please. Another thing that funding can't be used for, funding cannot go to contractors that provide match. So a for-profit entity that provides match, whether cash or in kind, to your project, can't serve as a contractor under the same award and can't be paid with any award funds to provide goods or services to the recipient. So essentially that would defeat the purpose of full and open competition. But that is also something that if you have a contractor that is going to be donating match your project, just give them well. And you can look at FAQ 13 for more on that. In addition to the addendum. Next slide, please. Another prohibition under this funding source is payment to individuals. So project funds can't be used to provide individuals directly cash or cash-like payments, including participant support costs. So it's not to use no work stipends, no wage subsidies. So that's another thing. They can't get direct payments. I'm going to look at FAQ 17. Also, if you're interested in the definition of participant support costs, it is defined now in the regulations. Again, under that definition section I mentioned at the beginning, 2 CFR 200.1. Next slide, please. Construction costs. We've mentioned this a couple of times. I'll say it again, but costs for any activity that can disturb the ground or modifies a structure are not allowable under its NOFO. There is a small exception, and that is if the costs are related to equipment installation are really minimal and they receive prior EDA approval. But if you have a project that requires more than very minimal equipment installation, you'll want to include the equipment installation costs, either cover them yourselves, but it's not going to be considered eligible as funding or for match under this particular project, under this source of funding. Next slide. So let me talk a little bit about procurement. All contracts under the award have to follow procurement regulations in 2 CFR 20.317 through 0.327. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Next slide, please. So we talked a little bit about the fact that subrecipients and contractors are both listed under the same line item in the budget, which could be a little confusing, but you do have to say, is this a subrecipient or a contractor? And it's typically a question that the applicant or recipient would use their best judgment to determine based on the factors in 2 CFR 200.331. And I've listed some out here on the slide so you can see a subrecipient is essentially an entity that's eligible for a financial assistance award. In our case, it has to be an eligible entity. So if you have a for-profit, it can't be a subrecipient. But typically, this kind of relationship is for an entity that also has a performance measured according to the same metrics that a recipient would have its performance measured. They also make programmatic decisions. They have to adhere to program requirements, and they carry the program for the public purpose, similar to a grant, versus a contractor. A contractor typically provides goods or services on a competitive basis for anybody who pays them, typically working 9 to 5 in a competitive environment. The goods or services are ancillary to implementing a federal program, and they have to be competitively procured, so quite different. So let's talk a little bit about what, at this stage, what you have to know about. Next slide, please. At this stage, you need to know that all procurements need to be done with full and open competition. This is a competition regulation at 2 CFR 200.319. The methods of how to do it is the next regulation at 2 CFR 200.320. We're not going to go over that here today because we're just at the application stage. But just so you know, regardless of when the procurement is made, they have to follow procurement regulations and they have to comply with the full and open competition. Organizations that are making procurement contracts have to comply with their own written procedure first and foremost. Those procedures have to be at a minimum compliant also with these federal requirements. One of the things that's a requirement is that procedures, they have to ensure that every solicitation excludes contractors that develop or draft specifications, requirements, statements of work in competition. So those contractors that might participate in the drafting of an RFP or statement of work can't then go around and compete on it. And this regulation here gives examples of situations that may restrict competition. That's also would be prohibited. Some more key things to know on the next slide. At this stage, you might want to know that the current micro purchase threshold was recently raised. It's $15,000. Competition or contracts that are, I think we missed the size. Now we're on weather. Thank you. The key thing to know, the micro purchase threshold, things below 15,000, essentially, go to your box store and in the aggregate, I should say, if a procurement in the aggregate doesn't total more than 15,000, there's no need to compete that. Just understood that it's reasonable if it's being sold on your local store shelves. The current simplified acquisition threshold is $350,000. It was recently raised, and that is the threshold determining whether something needs to be competed using small purchase procedures, which is below $350,000, or the formal procedures like sealed bids, public procurements. So even if you happen to list a contractor's name in your application, which sometimes happens, even if you do that, you would have to show that you competed that contractor. So just by including a contractor's name in your application, and if you were selected, that doesn't endorse your selection process. All contractors, even if they're listed in an application, you have to be competitive. Just so you know, the non-competitive procurement method is rarely approved because it rarely applies. Sometimes there's a public exigency, but that doesn't, it's pretty rare, and it requires written approval by EDA. So if you have any thoughts about trying to get a non-competitive procurement approved, I think it's going to be pretty hard, unless one of the exceptions applies to our situation. I think that's all I have to say, but if we have any time, I can answer questions at the end or look at the chat now. And now I'll turn it over to my colleagues. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Nancy. So we have one more piece that we do want to get through, and that is giving you a quick snapshot of the submitting platform, which is called Edge. And now I will pass it to my colleague, Amanda Costi, to walk us through that piece.
Hello, everybody. My name is Amanda. I'm a program officer on the Office of Innovation and Entrepreneurship. And I get the great privilege of talking about everyone's favorite platform, Edge, which is how you submit it. So first and foremost, when you go to the website, you will find the correct notice of funding opportunity, in this case, the AI Upskill Accelerator Pilot Program. You will need to log in order to apply. So once you click the login button, next slide, you'll have to agree to the terms and conditions to accept in order to continue to the application. There we go. You will create an account by selecting not a member and be able to start that process. So as we go to the next slide, you'll see there's some information we need. If this is your first time applying using Edge, you will need to set up not only your user profile, but your organization's profile. So for that, before you start this process, make sure you have on hand your UEI number for your organization. This is your unique entity identifier number. And then separately, you will also need your EIN or TIN, which are your employer or taxpayer identification numbers. After you search and after you create your organization profile, there'll be some other information there like name of organization, address, things like that that are pretty common. Do make sure that you have the full legal name of your organization on it that matches up with the UEI registration. That'll just help us in the process. Once you do that, once your account is fully set up, it will know it might take 24 to 48 hours for your account to fully sync. So I would start this process today if you can. A lot of people wait till the last second, but we have to approve your new organization into the system, and it could take us a day or two. So first and foremost, if you haven't already created an account, please do so immediately so that you don't have any delays the day of the deadline. Once your account is fully registered and you can go back in, hit that apply now button, it will ask you to enter a project title for your application. This is important to know because you cannot go back and change this. So this is, what is the name of your program that you're proposing? Using a descriptive title is really helpful here. Something like, let's say like Minnesota's AI, for whatever technology or whatever you want the title to be, that's fine. But I do want to note that it is hard to go back and change this. You'll have to submit a help desk ticket in order to change this. So choose your title wisely. And then once you do that, you're now into the application. What you're going to want to do first is the very first thing I would encourage you to do is to add all of your team members to your application. These are the folks who will be helping you. This might be your budget staff. This may be your CFO. This may be other people who are working on things. Whoever is the first to start the application will default to the lead applicant. The next thing you want to do is make sure that you have your full team members on there, that they're invited and that they're able to log into Edge. Next slide. It's really important that you add an authorized representative and you really commit to memory who that authorized representative is. Because the authorized representative is the only person who can push the submit button at the end of this application. So you want to add team members so that everyone can contribute and help with the uploading of documents and checking of things. But that person who is named as authorized representative is the only person who can submit the application. We cannot tell you how many times on the day it's due, people are freaking out because they can't submit it. And 99.9% of the time, it is because they are not the person who's authorized to submit it. I'm going to say one more thing about this, that the authorized representative is the person who has signatory authority for the organization. So this is somebody who, in the case that you're awarded, can sign the award and say, like, we accept the terms and conditions. Okay, next. So once you're in, the very first thing you're going to want to do is fill out the SF424 form. So this is general information. A lot of this will be populated from your organization profile that you set up right when you tried to create your account. So you'll see some of that is auto-populated. If it is incorrect, it means your organization profile is probably incorrect. So you want to submit a ticket to the help desk to help rectify that situation. But generally, this is the overall program information, has things like congressional districts, so forth. You need to do this form first because it will unlock other sections of the application. And then from there on, you'll see all of the places to upload the different forms that are required as listed in the NOFO. So in the NOFO, there is kind of a list of all the required documentation, including your budgets, including your narratives. It should be very clear on where to upload it. When in doubt, you can always upload it to the other folder. There's like a catch-all folder that's just called other. So if you're really stuck on like where to upload something, feel free to upload it there. We kind of get all the application materials as a zip file on the back end. So don't lose sleep over that. But I do want to point to a number of really helpful resources. There's some Edge tutorial videos on submitting the application, filling out the funding requests, how to assign team roles. I see a question in the chat from Chris about a prospective contractor assisting the applicant. There's a whole video on that about adding third parties to your Edge profile. So the answer to that is yes. And the best email address in the history of email addresses, this is our help desk. Our great team here can help you with any errors that are happening in your Edge profile. So make sure you track the grant HD support at EDA.gov. That is our Edge, our IT help desk that is happy to help you. So that's it on Edge.
Yes, thank you, Amanda, and thank you, Shalini and Nancy, for assisting with this information today. So just to highlight the competition resources that are available, we have done an AI addendum overview webinar, not today, but on May 19th, and that is posted on our website. I do see some comments in the chat that the website recording for the first webinar is linking out to the PDF instead of the PDF and the video. So we will get that updated, but you will also be able to see past webinars and the PowerPoint slides. This PowerPoint slide and recording will also be posted once we conclude here and we get that through the system and upload it. We also have the addendum posted. So that is the notice of funding opportunity for the AI Upskill pilot program. So as we've mentioned throughout this webinar and several, referring back to that as an authoritative source of what is required for this funding opportunity that is posted and available for you. We have frequently asked questions that are posted as well on our website and will continue to be updated throughout the competition with new questions that come in as a result of the webinars that we've hosted and any questions that we get through our email box. And again, our email box is posted where you can submit the questions as I stated at the top of the call. If you have previously submitted questions through that OIE mailbox, we do have them and we will be responding this week accordingly to get you that updated information. The next webinar that we will host will be June 23rd at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The link to that webinar meeting can be found on our website. And if there are any changes, which I do not anticipate to the schedule of that, we will notify via the website. And so we have 6 minutes left, but probably not a whole lot of time to answer your questions sufficiently. So we will say thank you for joining us today. Please feel free to reach out to us with any questions. We will also be taking the questions from the chat that we may not have gotten to here and following up with you. We do have your emails recorded, so we will be able to get the response to the right participant that is asking the question. So again, thank you so much for joining us today, and we will see you later.